Hey everybody, welcome to this video. This is video number 6, which corresponds to the 6th module, which involves multiplying and dividing fractions. So we're going to jump into a couple of examples to illustrate the process for multiplying and dividing fractions, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to share my screen and we will go ahead and walk through these problems. All right, so multiplying and dividing fractions. We're going to go through just 2 examples in this video because the examples that I chose involve the most number of steps that you might have to possibly go through. So with that, we're going to jump into the first problem, which involves multiplication. So we're going to find the product, and what I've done is I'm using 2 mixed numbers. And again, I chose these because it involves the most number of steps when it comes time to combine the numbers together. So we're going to start by converting all of the mixed numbers to improper fractions. In order to multiply fractions, you have to be dealing with improper or proper fractions. You cannot have mixed numbers in the multiplication. So this is a situation where we want to do that conversion. So like we did in the previous video a while ago, we need to multiply 7 times 1 and then add 3 to convert the first fraction, and that becomes 10/7. Then we're going to do the same thing with the second fraction. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12/5. So we've converted the mixed numbers into improper fractions. Okay, now the new steps that are involved. The next thing we want to do is we want to do what's called canceling. And this is essentially kind of reducing the fractions ahead of time rather than waiting and doing it at the end. And the way to cancel is you're simply looking to see if there's something in the numerator and something in the denominator that can be divided evenly by the same value. Now the values that you're looking for don't have to be in the same fraction. The catch is just that one number is in the numerator, one number is in the denominator. So in this problem, I noticed that 10 and 5 can both be divided by 5. Okay, they can be divided by the same value. So we're going to go ahead and do that division. 10 divided by 5 is going to result in 2. 5 divided by 5 is going to result in 1. Okay. So what I can do is I'm essentially canceling out a 5, okay? And so my fractions now become 2/7 and 12/1. Like I said, what we're doing essentially is we're reducing ahead of time rather than reducing at the end. Okay? What that does is it just gives us some smaller numbers to work with, which makes it a little bit easier to do the multiplication and to check to make sure that our final answer is in fact reduced. Okay? Now, once you've canceled as much as possible, we can go ahead and move on to the next step, and that involves multiplying the numerators. So 2 times 12 is 24. And then we're going to multiply the denominators. 7 times 1 is 7. And so we end up with our fraction 24/7. Now, we always want to double check to make sure that the final answer is in fact in lowest terms. So you should always look to reduce and see if that's a possibility. It's just a nice way to double check to make sure that you had actually canceled everything that you originally could possibly cancel earlier on in the problem. Now, 24/7, nothing can divide into 24 and into 7 evenly, so this fraction is reduced. Now, some people like to convert improper fractions back into mixed numbers. And it's totally up to you, or it depends on the nature of the problem. Sometimes it makes more sense to leave a fraction as a mixed number. Sometimes it makes more sense to convert it into a mixed number. So improper fraction, mixed number, it just kind of depends on the situation. If you choose to do that conversion, 24/7 is the same as 3 and 3/7. Okay. And there you go. Either answer is acceptable. They're both equivalent to each other and they basically mean the same thing. So I leave it up to you to kind of decide which version to write your final answer in. All right, so that's the multiplication problem. Let's do our second problem, which in this case is going to involve division. And the nice part about division is there's actually just one extra step. Okay, it's very similar to a multiplication problem with the exception of, like I said, one additional step that's thrown in there. So the first thing we got to do is, number one, convert any mixed numbers to improper fractions. Again, they have to be in improper fraction form in order to do the process. So 1 3/7 is the same as 10/7. 2 2/5 is the same as 12/5. Okay, so we converted mixed numbers into improper fractions. Now, here's the added step. With a division problem, what we have to do is we actually have to turn it into a multiplication problem. And the way that we do that is we flip the fraction that comes after the division symbol. Okay, or we do what's called finding the reciprocal of that fraction. So the 12/5, excuse me, becomes 5/12. So we literally just flip it over. Now, the other thing that we do is when we do that flip, we convert division into multiplication. That keeps the problem in an equivalent form. Okay. Now that I've done that, now I'm dealing with a multiplication problem. So now it's the same remaining steps as what we did in the last example. Okay. So we're going to look to see if we can do any canceling. In this problem, we have 10 and 12. They're both even, so both of those can be divided by 2. So I can cancel a 2 out by taking 10 divided by 2 to get 5, and taking 12 divided by 2 to get 6. Okay, so we cancel as much as possible. So we end up with 5/7 times 5/6. That's our problem after we've done the reducing ahead of time, essentially. Now we go ahead and we multiply the numerators, and then we multiply the denominators. So we end up with 25/42. And again, we always look as our last step to make sure we have canceled everything. So we look to see if there's any possible reducing that can happen. In this case, I don't think that there's anything that divides nicely into 25 and into 42. So that's our indication that we are done and that our final answer is in lowest terms. So when all said and done, we end up with 25/42. All right, so there you go. We just did the two problems. I picked example problems that involved all of the possible steps that you might have to go through. So hopefully they are helpful in illustrating the steps associated with multiplying fractions and with dividing fractions. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to help you out with any questions that you might have. Otherwise, I hope the video was helpful, and we'll see you in the next video.